The Fantastic Four are, what's the word?
Fantastic.
There's a reason why they've been a beloved staple of Marvel Comics for like 60 years now, and with the promise of more Fantastic Four on the way in the MCU, they're more popular than ever. But there really hasn't been just one version of the Fantastic Four, but rather there's been a bunch of them. So I thought today I'd rank all the most powerful versions of Marvel's first family. And where do the live action versions we've seen rank compared to the comics? Let's discuss all that right now. Very early on in Spider-Man's comic run, he had the idea of joining the Fantastic Four in order to make some cash. Most famously, there's a whole what-if issue devoted to the idea of the team becoming the Fantastic Five and fighting crime together. And really, it's a fun pairing. Adding Spider-Man to any team is immediately going to increase your credibility as one of the best teams around. Spider-Man is one of the best Marvel heroes for a reason, but not only considering power levels, I like what Spider-Man on the Fantastic Four does for the team overall. More specifically, I really like Spidey's rivalry with Human Torch as the two butt heads a lot, and having Spidey on the team gives Reed Richards someone to geek out with science-wise. It's not as catchy of a name, but a permanent Fantastic Five could really work. There's going to be a lot of alternate teams on this list, and some of the wildest are the ones that have no versions of the original members on it. That brings us to the all-new Fantastic Four, which is a version of the team that formed after the fake demise of the OG team. Now take a look at this overpowered team-up. It's Spider-Man, Hulk, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculously OP. What villain could feasibly stand in the way of these four? You got the smarts covered with Spidey, the unstoppable power of the Hulk, the mystical demonic side with Ghost Rider, and arguably the best healing factor around with Wolverine. If these four teamed up permanently, then it's game over for everyone. Luckily, the original Fantastic Four turned out to be alive, so this fabulous four quickly disbanded, and villains everywhere rejoiced. Alright, the Four Fantastics are one of the most powerful teams, but also have the dumbest name. Seriously, the Four Fantastics? That just makes my skin crawl for some reason. It sounds awful. And maybe it makes sense considering the roster. Sure, you have Jonathan and Sue Storm, but instead of the Thing, you have the Hulk, and instead of Reed Richards, you have Victor Von Doom. That's right, in this alternate universe, Dr. Doom is the hero who leads this group. And you can't see me because I'm just a voice on YouTube, but I definitely put air quotes around the word hero. That's because although the Four Fantastics seem like good guys, it turns out Doom was, shockingly, a bad guy who was secretly controlling the genetically altered people of that Earth to recognize him as basically a living god. Classic Doom. Okay, as I start to get a bit more wild with the variations and the alternate versions of the Fantastic Four, I have to give some love to the OGs. The Fantastic Four, just plain and simple, absolutely rock. They've stood the test of time and create fascinating stories together over their many years. Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm have basically done it all, and they complement each other so well. Having the smartest guy in the world, pairing him up with a woman who creates force fields and makes things invisible, along with the super strong rock monster with self-esteem issues and a hotshot flame-producing entity perfectly meshes together to make a fantastic team. You can't beat the classics. And although they're a little boring compared to some of the wild entries on this list, they're still so interesting as well as super powerful. Alright, I know I'm going to get some flack for placing them this high, but I recently rewatched the live-action Fantastic Four films, and I gotta say, although the movies are borderline terrible, if I'm being generous, the casting is practically perfect.
I can explain this.
Sure, Doom was a wash in both 2005's Fantastic Four and its sequel, and the whole Galactus debacle still boils my blood, but the actual Fantastic Four team was pretty much everything I want to see from a live-action Fantastic Four. Mr. Fantastic was a dorky science nerd, Ben Grimm struggled with his identity, and Johnny Storm was played with the perfect amount of cocky arrogance by pre-Captain America Chris Evans. And sure, again, they're high on this list, but in terms of power, I mean, hey, look how easily they beat Galactus and Dr. Doom in both movies. Any team that can do that is obviously pretty powerful, right? Oh, what's that? Both Doom and Galactus were completely watered down versions and some of the worst adaptations ever? Okay, I better move on before I get too angry. So with She-Hulk getting a big push lately thanks to her Disney Plus show, I wanted to talk about her run with the Fantastic Four back in the 80s. So, after the original Secret Wars storyline back in 1985, the Thing decided to stay behind on Battleworld because he could switch back and forth between human and the Thing. That was great for him, but a bummer for a team that kinda needs 4 members on it, or else it's kinda weird. So naturally, they needed to fill the spot. And that's where She-Hulk came into play. And overall, it was a great choice. She-Hulk could more than make up for the powerhouse element of the team that the Thing left behind, and did so with her normally enthusiastic attitude. She, of course, left the position when Ben came back, but she remained a solid reserve member for a while. More She-Hulk in general is always a good thing. You know, as long as the CGI looks good. The Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four are very similar to our own, but there are a few key changes. For one, this group was a lot younger when they got their powers, and instead of being hit with cosmic radiation, they were experimenting with teleportation tech. There's a few other differences here and there, but the core ideas of this team are the same as the main one. But of course, there's one big difference I should mention. This version of Reed Richards is slightly more unhinged, and he eventually breaks bad to become the supervillain known as the Maker. And if they ever brought this version of Reed Richards into the MCU to fight our heroes, we'd be in serious trouble. So I think that whole edge and general vibe makes this version of the team both powerful and interesting. Alright, so this team is the Fantastic Thors. You know, someone somewhere sat in a writer's room, and when coming up with ideas for new versions of Fantastic Four, they wrote Fantastic Thors on the board because it sort of rhymed, and then went from there. Well, the Fantastic Thors are exactly what you would expect. They're the same version of all the Fantastic Four characters, except they all wield hammers and are dressed like Asgardians. I know, right? That sounds awesome. This team doesn't get much explanation, but really, what else is there to get? Sure, it sounds like my 8-year-old nephew wrote that story, but it's still really cool. So when Marvel's hottest power couple decides to take a leave of absence, it makes sense to just replace them with another power couple. That's what happened in the comics when Reed Richards and Sue Storm decided to take a bit of a break from Fantastic Four-ing, and they asked Black Panther and Storm to take their place. Not a bad trade. T'Challa brings a kingly air to just about anything he does, and Storm is one of the most powerful mutants around. It makes this version of the Fantastic Four a unique and interesting variation, but also a pretty powerful one. I mean, the very first thing this group did was go confront the Watcher, which is kind of a hilarious first mission. Of course, that evolves into something greater, but I mean, this is a comic, of course it does. Yes, this one is a bit of a cheat. I know that we didn't exactly see Krasinski's Reed Richards with his version of the Fantastic Four, but we know they existed. You know, unless this version of Reed just wears a big 4 on his chest for some reason. And you have to think they're at least competent, right? I mean, the Illuminati calls Reed the smartest man alive, so that's gotta count for something. But also, is this Earth just a little dumber? So right now I'm only judging Earth 838's Fantastic Four based on the actions of their leader, but a team is only as strong as their weakest link, right? This Reed may have helped beat Thanos, but he was also taken out in an instant thanks to his arrogance that Black Bolt could stop Scarlet Witch. So for that, I'm just assuming this version of Fantastic Four wasn't that great. Now, this is just a name determined to trip me up. The mega-scale, meta-talent response team version of the Fantastic Four obviously don't hail from our universe. This is from the Mangaverse, a world where everything has a bit of a more anime slant to it. This origin sounds super intense too. So the 4 characters who make up this team were scientists who worked on a special moon base. But after things went haywire, these 4 accidentally got their powers. Again, still everything you need in order to become a superhero, but don't try that at home, please. Their fights and designs are all drawn with an anime style, which does look pretty cool. Okay, 2015's Fantastic Four, or Four Stick, or whatever you want to call it, was a disastrously bad movie. I still remember sitting in the theater, and as the final fight started to happen, and then very quickly wrapped up, I had a feeling of, oh wait, was this it? Just a brutal movie to sit through. But with all that said, I do think if we're ranking all the different versions of the Fantastic Four, then this iteration was actually pretty powerful. Sure, they had an OG flair to them, but the Thing looked legitimately scary, while both Sue Storm's and Human Torch's powers seemed like they were given a serious upgrade. Too bad they were in one of the worst superhero movies of all time, or else I might have put them higher on this list. Oh well. But seriously, their transformation scene, one of the scariest origins for any hero ever. Alright, a few of these aren't entirely alternate versions of the Fantastic Four, but they have a close enough sounding name to get them a spot on this list. So here's Fin Fang Four. So yes, Fin Fang Four does include Fin Fang Foom, but that's not all. Other monstrous foes make up the roster, including a monstrous Electro, Gugam, and Gorgilla. It's a silly story, and the monsters are shrunk down to human size where they get everyday jobs, but when a huge monster appears, it's up to these, Fin Fang Four, to step up and save the day. Why couldn't Doctor Strange travel to the universe with this in it? That would have been awesome to see. So the Fantastic Four are usually pretty organized. They understand that they're a brand and you need to uphold the brand even when not around. That's where the FF team comes into play. Think of these guys like understudies who step up when the main group isn't around. The Fantastic Four formed the FF as a way to still monitor Earth when they were off on some negative zone adventure or somewhere in space or something like that. The team consisted of Scott Lang's Ant-Man, Medusa, Miss Thing, and She-Hulk. Hey, look at that, another She-Hulk sighting. A really solid lineup here with a lot of variety of powers. They're a little second fiddle, but that's the whole point of this group. How many pyrokinetic heroes is too many pyrokinetic heroes? I ask because near the bottom of this list is the version of the Fantastic Four that included the superhero known as Nova. This hero was able to control fire much like the Human Torch, and she wound up teaming up with the Fantastic Four frequently in the 70s. Now, on the surface, it looks like having two flame people on a team is overkill, but I like how they can turn up the heat on a lot of villains. Though things didn't end up so well when Nova decided to peace out and serve as the Herald of Galactus. Come on, Nova. They were considering changing the name to the Fantastic Five. Don't go teaming up with Galactus. I already mentioned the version of Reed Richards that went evil and became the Maker, but what happened to the Fantastic Four after that? Well, something quite extraordinary. Like, it was a complete home makeover and new heroes stepped up to help save the day. The Ultimate Future Foundation is headed by the brilliant Sue Storm and made up of roster members that include Iron Man, Falcon, and Machine Man. I don't know a whole lot of Machine Man, but I do know that the thought of Sam Wilson and Tony Stark interacting is just too good to be true. This pairing is low-key pretty cool. This version is another Fantastic Five combination, and that's populated with some interesting members. Reed Richards and Sue Storm were gone, sort of, and Johnny Storm stepped up to become the leader. He filled out the roster with his wife, aka the Skrull known as Lyja, Franklin Richards, and a slightly bionic version of the Thing. But what made them the Fantastic Five? Well, actually, the brain of Reed Richards was recovered and put in a little robot, and he became the fifth member. Wacky, right? Okay, this one isn't a direct copy of the Fantastic Four, but I mean, their name is the Fearsome Four. Of course, our brains are going to draw comparisons. And hey, when you hear Fearsome Four, you picture a team led by someone probably a little scary, right? But would you believe me if I said Howard the Duck is the leader of the Fearsome Four? So you know it's a little far out. The rest of this group is made up of Nighthawk, Frankenstein's monster, and She-Hulk. Hey, look at that, a third She-Hulk sighting. But seriously, any team with Howard the Duck and Frankenstein's monster on the same side becomes immediately interesting to me. And I just like how this team fills out the archetypes of the Fantastic Four characters. I mean, you have a super intelligent leader, sort of a love interest, a hothead, and a strong muscle man. That's basically the Fantastic Four. The Frightful Four sounds like a silly name, but come on, the Fantastic Four is a silly name too, and we all just got used to it. So maybe this is a match made in heaven. I've talked about a few different versions of the Fantastic Four in this video, but if you're looking for an all-villain team of Fantastic Four variations, then you have the Frightful Four. The original Frightful Four consisted of members Medusa, the Wizard, Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, and their powers are quite the low-level affair. Like Paste Pot Pete, yeah, he has a paste gun that he likes to use in his crimes. The Wizard isn't actually even a wizard, but just uses his own tech for a suit of armor. And then Sandman is a great powerful villain for sure, but you know he's going to turn good sooner or later, so put them all together and you got yourself a pretty competent Frightful Four. So the Fantastic Four are obviously the most famous family comic group with 4 members, but did you know there's a similar group over in DC called the Challengers of the Unknown? You can squint and kind of see the connection. Anyways, there was once a crossover called the Challengers of the Fantastic that combined the two groups together for one comic series. The biggest changes to this group include how the Thing had extra arms, and the Human Torch just had a flamethrower he walked around with. As far as power, sure they're alright, but it's the fun gimmick of combining these characters with their DC counterparts that makes it a true treat. Now, is it too much to ask to have a Battle World type of scenario where Tim Story's Fantastic Four and Josh Trank's Fantastic Four get transported to the same universe and have to fight each other? Who would win in this case? As much as I dislike them, I think Trank's Fantastic Four or Fan Four Stick or whatever would win. What do you think?